It's amazing how we look at Dakota Prescott at times, especially last year we saw him as a legitimate MVP candidate. This year in 8 games, my man's got 9 interceptions. He had all of 10 last year in 16 games. The question being on the truckwreck.com text line 877-881-1053, and when I pose to Alec Medford, will Dak Prescott's interception problem cost the Dallas Cowboys in the playoffs?
You know, it's obviously concerning how those numbers have really spiked since his return, but it also feels like a lot of these are induced by the game plan, by the scheme. It feels like this team is really trying to stretch the field more. It feels like after Cooper Rush, getting that experience of having to play conservative and having to protect the ball, they saw that we have some talented guys that are doing very, very little with the football. We need to start testing things. And I mean, to their credit, it's worked in some games. You've seen the deep passes work. You've seen the hard counts into big plays. It feels like this is going to be something that we're going to have to talk about all the way up until that wild card game, because I don't see this pace slowing down anytime soon, really, because I think Mike McCarthy and Kellen Moore are going to keep playing aggressive. And do I think it hurts them in the playoffs? I don't think so. I feel like after last year's experience, I feel like this is going to be a team ready to come out firing. And if the playoffs started today, you're going to be going against a pretty bad team. So if you get like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers or something like that, any of those NFC North teams, I think that's a game that you can really kind of find your rhythm. You can find your momentum. You can find your stride, and you can see what works in the playoffs. I don't think they can replicate last season, and I think the aggression is going to kind of start to figure itself out in a positive manner as these games go on. So you got to remember, Dak Prescott missed over a month, so I feel like it's one of those things that's just got to kind of work itself out over time, and hopefully it starts to click at the right time. In the end, I don't think it hurts them in the playoffs.
It is never a good thing when you are in the same category as Matt Ryan this year.
Oh, boy.
And that's exactly where Dak Prescott finds himself in this particular category. His interception in the first half, the one that Tremon Smith got on the tipped pass, the fastball that he threw to Noah Brown, that was Dak Prescott's 8th first-half interception of the season, tying him with Indianapolis's Matt Ryan for the most in first halves this year. And as you mentioned, this was the same Prescott that missed 5 games with a broken thumb, and he's found a way to throw 8 interceptions in the first half since returning for this football team. So look, and the truckwreck.com text line is, pouring in some of their responses, and I think to some of that is this. You like the aggressiveness at which Dak Prescott is throwing the football, because in this league, you've got to throw dudes open sometimes, and you have to live with some of the mistakes that come with trying to throw guys open. But the part that bothers me at times with Prescott is the decision-making. And for the most part, he's been a player that has been very smart with the football. He has also been a player that's talked about how much he detests interceptions and turnovers. So for us to still be talking about this the way that we are, it concerns me, because every week he's getting out here throwing interceptions. He's always taking accountability for it. Got to be better. Got to make sure that I'm looking at things the right way, not making the kinds of throws that put this team and this defense in a bad position. At some point, though, you've got to be able to put it together with that on the field to ensure that not only you're going through your right reads and your progressions, but you're not making decisions that could cost your team football games. Because you're right, as you get deeper and deeper into the season, into the playoffs, this is inexcusable. Because while you can get away with turning the football over twice against the Houston Texans, guess who you're not going to get away with that against? The Philadelphia Eagles. To a lesser degree, the Minnesota Vikings and the San Francisco 49ers. It's not going to fly. So ultimately, will I think it will cost the Dallas Cowboys? No, because I do think Dak Prescott will clean this up. The question is, when? Because you need to start doing that yesterday, literally. And we saw him struggle at times. Again, every interception has its own story. The 2 that he threw yesterday, He tried to fit a ball between a tight window, got tipped, picked off. The second one, Josh Ball was out here playing like trash, gave up back-to-back pressures, and he got his elbow hit on the second one, and you got picked off inside your own 5-yard line. So you can, excuse the way you want to, but the thing is, it cannot happen going forward. Otherwise, this team will not go where they feel like they are supposed to this year.
Yeah, it's such a slippery slope with, the reasoning behind these interceptions, the context of each. But at the end of the day, these are the mistakes that, can be schematically removed too. You saw a few weeks back, you had CeeDee Lamb running an option route, and everyone said that's a ball that Odell Beckham catches, and then there was the other crowd, Dak needs to place that higher, yada, yada, yada. That was a new kind of route, a new kind of play that they just added mid-season.
It's about the one with Schultz and, Lamb in the same area at the same time, yeah.
Like, let's try this.
Packers, yeah.
Yeah, let's throw something at the wall and see if it sticks, and it didn't. And, it's going to be one of those things that absolutely needs to be helped out by the head coach and by the offensive coordinator. I think that Dak Prescott has had a lot of bad luck, to a lot of the texters' credit here on the truckart.com text line, but these are things that are almost always avoidable in some sense, whether it's Dak Prescott's fault or not. Josh Ball, not an NFL player in my mind. You need to address that right tackle position by not playing him. CeeDee Lamb seemed like at the beginning of the year didn't really feel the aggressiveness from him. You need to see that step up, and you've seen him kind of get tough the past few weeks. You're seeing him take some shots after catches or in the process of a catch. He gets right back up and walks back to the line of scrimmage. There are some variables there. At the end of the day, an interception is an interception. So these are things that need to get cleaned up regardless of whose fault it is. And I think that this is a team that has learned from their mistakes pretty well so far this season. You see them address things pretty quickly. You saw the Zeke-Tony Pollard split wasn't exactly a split at the beginning of the year. It was still skewing towards Zeke. You're getting almost 50-50 splits with them now. You're seeing Michael Gallup get trusted with the ball more in aggressive situations. I think they're learning. So if they keep addressing issues the way they have, maybe James Washington helps you with some of those issues, a real big body receiver, aggressive catcher, I think you'll start to see these trend downward.
It's funny because this is just how imperfect an NFL season is as you're trying to get a result of winning a championship. We have been criticizing this team for their inability to stop the run. Guess what they've done the last several weeks now? They've been stopping the run. We've criticized this team for the amount of penalties that they have gotten each and every game. The last few weeks now, they've been cleaning up the penalties. Now, the turnover problem popping up with your quarterback, which to me is the most concerning because you can explain away some fluke interceptions. You can explain away some of the things in terms of how these turnovers happen. But what you cannot excuse, as what we've seen at times throughout the course of the year, a lack of communication with receivers and quarterback not being on the same page. That to me should not be a thing anymore when it comes to Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, and Michael Gallup. Those three need to be on the same page. Consistency, obviously, to a little bit lesser degree with Noah Brown as he's getting more and more opportunities, to play this year. So that to me is more concerning than anything else, is that we still see communication and timing issues for players who should have the kind of continuity, but that shouldn't be a problem anymore. So that to me is why ultimately I don't think it will, but at the same time there is definitely pause and concern given the fact that this is still something we are dealing with and talking about. And to Dak's credit, it was funny because went down after the game, having went to the game yesterday. You could tell as he was walking back to the locker room, he was not happy.
Yeah.
And he was not thrilled at all with the way things went down. Yes, ultimately leading the drive to win the game, but you could tell he was not happy about his performance, and nor should he be, because again, this is something that continuously pops up for him when it comes to his play and turnovers for this team.
Yeah, he did not seem happy at all, and I think the greatest thing about this team, and a good reason why you can have some confidence that this can and should go away, is that this team has really taken on the whole accountability thing to a new level this season. It feels like after that San Francisco playoff game last season, every time any kind of mistake is made by one single unit or one single player, it gets talked about. and it gets eradicated fairly quickly. We saw the game against the Packers, that loss. You heard for days after that, Jaron Kearse, Micah Parsons, other defensive leaders, it sounded like they were throwing shade at one or a few different players on the team. You know, like, there's not a want there. There's not, you know, people aren't doing their job. We got to do this better. Next 2 weeks, you start to see improvement. And I think if anyone is going to have accountability on this team, it's going to be number 4. And Mike McCarthy holds his guys accountable really well. He's very open and honest in his criticism with guys, too. And I think this team knows that the turnovers are an issue, and you're starting to see, like I mentioned, CeeDee Lamb being a bit more aggressive. And, you know, those things are starting to work themselves out. So if I'm not going to put any money against Dak Prescott ever in any situation, especially something that is literally just mental like this. Like you said, it's just the decision making. That's the one thing that's plaguing him right now. And you've heard it, you know, after games where we're having to ask Mike McCarthy and Kellen Moore after, did you see it the way the quarterback saw it, you know, on X play? It feels like this is something that you can get a Surface tablet and say, this is what's wrong. Don't do that anymore.
Dak Prescott has interceptions in 5 of his past 6 games, his most since he had 6 in weeks 2 through 5 of the 2019 season. And to the point, I see you 2-1-4. The interceptions don't mean anything. Matthew Stafford threw the most interceptions last year, won the Super Bowl. Lest we forget, he was a Jaquiski Tartt dropped interception away from not even playing in the Super Bowl. So while I hear you, and I definitely understand the point, even Matthew Stafford will tell you he got away with one in that NFC title game, because if Tartt doesn't drop that ball, we're not even talking about Matthew Stafford playing and winning in a Super Bowl. I say that to tell you is all of these quarterbacks, and you say, look, Kevin Mahomes had 3 picks yesterday. Josh Allen been turning the football over like crazy this year. Even the best guys have been turning the ball over. I will say this. We cannot have it both ways. If you want Dak Prescott to be considered one of the 5 best quarterbacks in this league, you're going to have to live with some of the trust throws and the aggressiveness that he's going to come with in trying to throw guys open, because we laud Mahomes and Allen and all the quarterbacks who you feel like are at the top of this league. We laud them for doing that. If you want him to be considered among that category, he's got to be able to do those things and do them with the kind of consistency that gives you the idea that he can be a plus in the playoffs and be the reason why you win deep into the playoffs, and not a reason why you don't, based on what you think he is or is not as a quarterback. So we can't have it both ways. Have him aggressive on one end, but also not making the aggressive throws that we see other guys make in order to make their teams better. I think that's where we are with Dak Prescott, and I'm able to live with some of the mistakes as long as that is balanced by mostly good decision making, which he's proven throughout most of his career he's capable of doing.
Yeah. Well, like I said a minute ago, there's no reason to doubt Dak that these things can get fixed. And like you say, like, coming out of last season, I remember one stat that Will Chambers used to love, you know, in the offseason when we have nothing better to talk about than is Dak a top 10 quarterback. People always want to say the decision making, or he's not accurate, blah, 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 blah. If he retired last year, he would have been a qualifier in pass attempts. He would have been top 5 in completion percentage in NFL history. You know, like
Wow.
this guy has made some decent decisions in his time. He can do it. It just seems like a rough patch. And part of me wonders, if he played those 5 games that he missed, do you think these interceptions are still a problem? Or do you think 5 games is enough to get those figured out and we're talking about something totally different right now?
It should be enough time to get it figured out, to be honest
It
with
should
you.
be. Yeah.
He's been in the league too long. Like, we should be talking about this in year 7. That's my biggest thing. We shouldn't be talking about this stuff in year 7, which he's in right now.